Hello and welcome into episode 7 of Snakes Territory. I'm your host, Jesse Friedman, joined once again by Jack Sommers of Arizona Diamondbacks on SI. Jack, somehow the Arizona Diamondbacks went from 17 consecutive scoreless innings and being outscored, I believe it was 11-0 at that point in the series, to somehow we're talking about a Diamondback series win over the Milwaukee Brewers over the weekend. Jack, first of all, how are you doing? And secondly, what just happened over the weekend in Diamondbacks baseball?
I'm doing great, Jesse. I really am. I mean, it was a fun weekend. That was a lot of interesting baseball that just happened. I would say the short version, bullpen happened, and it didn't happen to the Diamondbacks.
That's pretty fair. We've Diamondbacks have certainly been on the other side of these kinds of storylines time and time again over the past few years. But yes, they did that to a team that, generally speaking, has had a very, very good bullpen in recent seasons in the Milwaukee Brewers. We will go ahead and start with the finale of this game that happened on Sunday. Diamondbacks beat the Brewers 5-2. It was yet another comeback win for this team, Jack. It feels like that's kind of the only way that the Diamondbacks know how to win games at this point. We'll get into that a little bit more later. But an impressive win all the way around. Zach Gallen gave up a 2-run homer in the first inning to William Contreras, really bounced back nicely. And the Diamondbacks offense was quiet pretty much through the first half of this game, and then just kind of kept chipping away and wound up winning this game 5-2.
Yeah, Zach Gallen had a rough start. Where have we heard this before? The Diamondbacks have given up more runs in the first inning than any team in baseball. That's a 17 is the count, by the way. He gave up a 2-run homer to William Contreras. It was an absolute laser beam. And then he walked 2 in the second inning, and you're thinking, oh boy, here we go again. But just like that, he locked it in, and he was really effective from there on out. And he knew with Peralta on the mound, I mean, he was pitching really well. He was keeping the D-backs off balance with super location on his fastball and curveball. That was they just couldn't get to him in the early going. So Zach buckled down and did what he had to do to keep the team in the game, and it was a good outing. And eventually they started, like you said, pecking away and got back in the game. And they came back. Interesting note, Diamondbacks sent out the comeback from is the fourth time that they've come back from 2 runs down or more in the 7th inning or later. And that's the most in baseball. They did it 3 prior times, April 12th against the Brewers. That was the day before. April 1st against the Yankees, and March 30th against the Cubs. So apparently the answer backs are back.
Apparently so. This game, Jack, reminded me of game 2 of the wild card series from 2023 between these two teams. Maybe this is a bit of a reach, but I don't think it's too big of a reach. Zach Gallen, for people who may remember watching this game, you were probably very stressed out when you were watching this game, at least at the very beginning. Zach Gallen gave up 2 runs in the first inning of that one and managed to settle down. And through 6 innings of 2-run ball, he was opposed by Freddie Peralta. Just same situation in this game on Sunday, right? Freddie Peralta dominated the Diamondbacks in that game for the first few innings, and then eventually they kind of got to him. They didn't wind up getting to him quite to that extent today, as they did in the wild card round. But the Diamondbacks wound up winning that wild card game 5-2, Jack, and that is the exact same final score of the game today. So this whole day, I've been thinking about like all the little parallels between these two games. It's kind of fun.
Well, that's why you're bringing it, because I didn't even think of that parallel at all. Great, great, great find.
It's a bit of a reach on some level, but hey, the final scores were the same. The pitching matchup were the same, so there you go. A few noteworthy performances in this game. Corbin Carroll went 2 for 4 with a double, 2 runs scored, and a walk. He also stole a base in this game, which somehow that was his first stolen base of the 2025 season, on the same day that Josh Naylor stole his 4th base, I might add, which I find kind of funny. But Corbin just continues to do his thing. It feels like we're highlighting him basically every single time we do a show Just every single game, it seems like Corbin Carroll is going 2 for 4 at this point. Alek Thomas also came through with a really big 2-run single in this one that turned a 3-2 lead into a 5-2 lead. Really helpful insurance runs there. And certainly not Alek Thomas's only big hit in the series. So he continues. I know we're still talking small samples here, Jack, but Alek Thomas continues to look a lot better at the plate with the opportunities that he's been given.
Yeah, I'd also add in Josh Naylor, left on left, base hit up the middle to actually put them in that lead, 3-2. Another professional, intelligent at bat by Josh Naylor, which he just continues to excel at.
The bullpen was also good for the Diamondbacks in this one. You mentioned it earlier, where the bullpen happened, but it was the Brewers, not the Diamondbacks. The Diamondbacks bullpen was really solid. Just the 3 innings that that were needed after Zach Gallen was able to go 6. But 3 innings, 1 hit, no runs, 1 walk, 6 strikeouts. Justin Martinez looked really, really good in his inning of work, as he's seemed to do every single time out. AJ Puck was able to throw a scoreless inning as well. And Jalen Beek is kind of the new addition, I suppose, to the back end of this Diamondbacks bullpen. We're going to dive into that a little bit more later in the show, but it feels like this has kind of been the norm for the Diamondbacks this year, Jack, where when they have a lead at the end of a game, which granted, they haven't always been, in position to like have a lead for a significant portion of a game. But generally speaking, when they have had leads, this bullpen has been able to come through and protect them.
Yeah, the leverage relievers have been fantastic. I mean, Puck's a little shaky here and there, but he's only given up 2 runs in 6 innings. Mart hasn't given up a run yet. Beeks has only given up 1. Wait a minute. Jalen Beeks, is he a high leverage reliever now? He may be.
Stay tuned for more on that. We're gonna talk about that a little bit more later in the show. Zach Gallen, I guess maybe we should spend another minute or two talking about him. As you said earlier, it really did feel from the beginning of this game that this was gonna kind of be another Zach Gallen game that we've seen this season, where the fastball command just isn't there, and he's just gonna kind of slog along and try to get through 4 or 5 innings as best he can. But he really was able to settle in, and it felt to me, Jack, like part of that process for him was leaning a little bit less on the fastball, using the secondary pitches more. And as we've seen many times over the years, when Zach Gallen has his curveball and his changeup going, he can get a lot of outs on those pitches, right? And you still maybe have to throw a fastball every now and then to keep hitters honest, but his command of those pitches certainly seemed to be on point in this game, and he was able to ride that out for 6 innings. And you could argue that Torey Lovullo could have sent him out for the 7th as well. I think he was at 89 pitches. I imagine that was a decision that Torey was kind of thinking about in the dugout. Certainly something he could have done.
Absolutely. Torey's words were it was a 50-50 ball. He was thinking about sending him out. But at the end of the day, I think he made the right call. His bullpen was fully gassed up. I mean, all the guys he needed for this game were well rested. He's got a day off tomorrow. There was no reason not to turn that into the hands of the bullpen. I mean, it's not like he'd had a dominant 6 innings, 2 hits, 9 strikeouts, hadn't walked a batter. I mean, the guy's going like that, and he's in low mid 80s. Sure, you got to let him keep going. But that wasn't the case. I think that it was the right time. It was the right call.
Well, we're going to jump into some takeaways from this Diamondbacks Brewers series as a whole. But before we do that, we want to hear a couple of words real quick from the guys over at Foul Territory.
FT fam, you got to check out HelloFresh. I know AJ's favorite part of HelloFresh. They've got the 15-minute meals, 3 steps, and you've got your dinner.
I love it. It comes fresh to your house.
Mm-hmm.
It's pre-packaged with all the ingredients in almost a brown bag. Comes with all the instructions. And what I like most about it is some people say, I don't like to cook. I like to actually chop the ingredients, cook them up. That way it makes it feel like, even though it was pre-packaged, you feel like you're doing something. And it's so fresh vegetables, fresh meat, high quality, comes with all the sauces, comes with all the spices you need.
Yes, and if you're like, hey, you guys talk about Green Chef, that's right. They're in the same fam. Both bring different strengths to the table. So check out HelloFresh, of course, and get yourself up to 10 free meals and a free high protein item for life at HelloFresh.com/FT10FM. 1 item per box with active subscription. Free meals applied as discount on first box. New subscribers only, varies by plan. That's up to 10 free HelloFresh meals. Just go to HelloFresh.com/FT10FM.
Let's talk about this series as a whole, Jack. The Diamondbacks, as I said earlier, it really looked like a series that was not going in their favor. And then suddenly here we are talking about a Diamondback series win where they managed to take 2 out of 3 games. We can look at some numbers for some guys over the course of the series. Corbin Carroll, as I mentioned earlier, was great in the Sunday game for the series. He was 5 for 13 with 2 doubles. Geraldo Perdomo was 2 for 6 with 7 walks over the weekend. Jack, thoughts on one of those guys or both of those guys, or I don't know, Geraldo Perdomo, 7 walks? How exactly did that happen?
The guy's plate discipline is incredible. I mean, he fouls off pitches that he needs to foul off and just hangs in every at bat. He's got 13 walks and 2 strikeouts on the year. That's the best strikeout to walk ratio or walk to strikeout ratio of any hitter in the league right now. So that's pretty impressive. They're not really hurting too badly not having Cattell up at the top of the order when Perdomo's doing that. You get on base that much, you're setting a lot of things up. It's the middle of the order that's got to come through a little bit more, but we'll circle back around there. When you go to Alek Thomas, as you just talked about him before, he had a huge triple in that 9th inning that really got the ball rolling. And it was kind of funny. I was texting with a friend, and as you know, I tend to get a little snarky on these in-game texts. And they were down 4-0 at the time. And I texted to a friend. I said, well, here's what you can write for the opening paragraph, or, for the summary paragraph, was Alek Thomas hit a 2-run homer, but it was too little too late. And then 2 seconds after I got done typing that, boom, ball bounces off the wall in center field, actually off the thick part of the railing just below the yellow line in center field, 419 feet for a triple. That got the ball rolling. And then next thing you know, Jake McCarthy's getting a base hit to tie up the game, and they had the bases loaded. A couple of walks in that inning, including Perdomo's, Garrett Hampson, and Lourdes finally lifted one in the air the other way, sac fly, boom, you got a 5-run inning. That is the biggest comeback in franchise history with one or more out in the 9th inning. They've had 5-run comebacks before, but they never made an out. But they already had one out in the inning and then scored the 5 runs. So really impressive stuff that they were able to hang in there and make that happen after being down so long, 17 scoreless innings. And, they earned those 17 scoreless innings. I mean, it was like 0 for a bazillion with runners in scoring position.
Yeah, so I was at a family member's house actually on Saturday night. So I was not watching the game, but I remember checking the score, and I believe it was 4-1, I think, when I checked. So Gino Suarez grounded out to start the bottom of the 9th, and Gabby Moreno walked. I think Alek Thomas had just hit his triple. And so I checked, and he was at third base with 1 out. It was a 4-1 game. And then I went back to, spending time with this family member. And then I checked back like 15 minutes later or something. And I could hardly believe it, Jack. It was really like how, and not only the fact that the Diamondbacks came back and did this, but they didn't make an out the entire time up until, of course, the game-winning sacrifice fly, which was remarkable to me. I mean, literally from the time that I had checked my phone to the end of the game, no one made an out in that entire time other than the sacrifice fly that ultimately won the game for the Diamondbacks. So seeing that in person, Jack, must have been really something.
It was exciting. It was fun to follow. It was a little nerve-wracking trying to keep up. You know what that's like when you're writing stories about games and trying to manage the editing of those stories, and all of a sudden everything's changing at the last second. It's a zoo. It's a challenge that a lot of people don't think about, but it can be pretty fun too at the same time. You really get your adrenaline pumping even up in the press box.
So what you're saying is that for the betterment of your writing and publishing duties at Arizona Diamondbacks on SI, you would like the Diamondbacks to maybe steer away from these very dramatic comeback wins and maybe just like take a lead early in a game and hold it throughout every now and then. Like maybe that would be nice.
what an awesome segue into the next point. They have allowed, as we said, 17 runs in the first inning. Seventh inning on, they've scored 38, which is the most in baseball. Matter of fact, they've outscored teams 38-16 from seventh inning on. At some point, if they're going to be sustainably successful, you can't just keep giving up leads and expecting to come back late in the games. They're going to have to start limiting damage in the earlier innings and scoring a little bit earlier in games. But hey, their wins, they count in the books. They're 9-7, and pace. They're on pace to go 90-70, right? That's 10% of the season. So we'll take it.
Another thing I want to touch on from the series is the starting pitching across the board. We talked about Zach Gallen already and how he managed to bounce back in a pretty impressive way and put up a quality start in that Sunday game. Overall, Jack, I guess a pretty encouraging weekend for the starting pitching. We'll start with Eduardo Rodriguez, who pitched on Friday, a game that was by and large pretty forgettable, certainly for Joe Mantiply, who did not have a particularly good day at the yard that day, as the Diamondbacks ultimately lost 7-0. But a positive that you could take from that day is that Eduardo Rodriguez did look pretty good. At least his final line was pretty good. I guess maybe you can shed light on whether he actually looked as good as the final line. But 6 1/3 innings, 6 hits, 3 runs, only 2 of those earned, 2 walks, 3 strikeouts. He didn't strike out 12 like he did the last time out. But Eduardo Rodriguez pitching into the 7th inning, that's something we haven't seen a whole lot since his Diamondbacks tenure began.
He looked good. He was efficient. I was really pleased with the way he threw the ball. Again, it wasn't all the strikeouts, but he got the soft contact for the most part that he needed. The first run scored on back-to-back doubles. And then when he allowed 2 runs the next inning, a little bit of bad luck there. He gave up a couple singles. And then Gabby Moreno committed a pass ball with the batter bunting and kind of blocking his vision with the bat. And the ball hit him in a sensitive area, as they often like to say on the broadcast. That put runners on second and third, and then those 2 runs scored on a ground out and a sacrifice fly. So very easily could have been just a couple of runs given up. Unfortunately, as you said, in that game, Joe Mantiply struggled. He got kind of, dinked and dunked, and it was a little unlucky there too, which has kind of been a theme for him. He gives up a fair amount of contact, but this wasn't a lot of hard contact. But he pitched to 9 batters. I think he threw over 30 pitches. He gave up 4 runs. So it was a tough outing for Joe. With the offense, they went, I think, 1 for the last 19 in the game. It just wasn't happening for them. So
yeah, they went 4 for 29, and all 4 hits were singles. They only had 3 opportunities with runners in scoring position and went 0 for 3. So Friday was it didn't really matter how bad a day Joe Mantiply had in some ways. The Diamondbacks offense just didn't do enough to win a baseball game that night.
But back to the starting pitching. I mean, actually, Erob was in the middle of a run of now with Zach, 5 straight quality starts for the team. So after all the agita about the starting pitching, the first 2 turns for the rotation, there you go. We got 5 straight starts of quality starts. So this is more what we expected from the Diamondbacks rotation. Maybe not complete and utter dominance top to bottom, but pitchers keeping keeping the team in the game. That's what they're supposed to do. And comparatively to what we're seeing in a few other teams on the league, it's actually improving quite a bit.
I guess, I mean, it's so early that, we've talked about Corbin Burnes already and how we certainly weren't overly concerned about him after his last start. And he was better this time around, right? 6 innings, 4 hits, 3 runs, 2 walks, 3 strikeouts. That's a quality start. That's something you'll certainly take the vast majority of the time. At the same time, we still haven't seen the truly dominant version of Corbin Burnes, the guy that I think Diamondbacks fans were really anticipating. That guy has yet to show up over the course of a complete start. In this game, Jack, he only had 5 whiffs. There was not a lot of swing and miss. There were a lot of foul balls. I believe there were 17 foul balls in that game on Saturday. But again, the overall line was pretty good. So do you view this as a step in the right direction for Corbin Burnes, or maybe kind of more of the same, but he's still just so good that he can still give you a quality start when his stuff isn't at its best? How did you feel about that outing?
It was definitely a step in the right direction because his command and control was much better. Alfonso Marquez had a very poor game, especially when it came to calling balls and strikes for the Diamondbacks. He clearly cost Burnes a couple of runs there in that game. He missed two clear strikes to Sal Frelick in the same at bat, led to a walk, and of course base hit came after and runs scored. And then later on in the game, Burnes really kind of let him hear it. Like he's, sparking at him. You cost me 2 runs. And after the game, he was calm. He wasn't like, obviously the team won, so he was happy. But he spoke a couple of times during the media scrum about the fact that bad calls were made. They went against him. More of them went against the Diamondbacks than the Brewers. That kind of proved out in the umpire's scorecard review. It really wasn't great. So I think that part of it, he actually pitched much better. He dotted the corners and just didn't get the calls that he really should have on at least 3-4 pitches in key points in the game and at bats. Had he gotten those, probably gets a couple more strikeouts, one or two less walks. So I think from that aspect, much better. But you're right, the swing and miss still missing. The dominance is still missing. It'll come, I think. I certainly don't think he's over the hill. He goes through stretches like this. And so I'll take the improvement with the command and the control and wait for the dominant swing and miss to come.
We've talked about the cutter as being the primary reason that he hasn't quite been himself, the guy that we've seen the past few years. And I think that is largely true. I think we focus mostly on the command side of that pitch, and that is probably what is more to blame than anything else. But I will say that the quality of contact against the cutter this year, again, it's such a small sample, but it's been really poor. It's not as if he's just walking guys with his cutter. It's that the cutter is getting hit like it's never been hit before. After that third start, the opposing hitters have a weighted on-base average, which is basically reads like an on-base percentage, but it factors in doubles and triples and homers and all different types of hits. So it's a 428 against his cutter after his first 3 starts of the season. And you look at the expected stats based on launch angle and exit velocity and all that stuff, his expected WOBA against on that pitch is 429. So according to the expected stats, the cutter has genuinely been hit very, very hard. Another number that stuck out to me here is that the average exit velo against the cutter is 94.7 miles an hour. That's really, really high for any pitch, right? Especially Corbin Burnes' cutter, which has been one of the most dominant pitches in baseball over the past few years. So again, I don't think either of us are too concerned about this. Clearly, this start was a step in the right direction, but something I wanted to point out that I don't think it's just him missing off the edge a bunch. For whatever reason, and I could maybe dig more into this, but opposing hitters are making very hard contact with that pitch in a way that we're not used to seeing.
You're right. It requires more research. My guess is going to be that if we took a look at heart versus shadow areas of the zone with the pitch, it's probably degraded in that regard as well, which kind of still goes back to the command, right? It's partly about not walking guys and getting to the edge, but it's also about keeping the ball out of very hittable spots. So I'm going to guess that most of those hard hit balls are in very hittable spots.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. From a movement standpoint, the pitch is appears to be moving more than it did last year. I know that was a big narrative last season that the cutter was not moving the same way as it had in the past. The movement numbers are similar to where they were in 2023, although the horizontal movement is about 1 inch lower than we've seen at times from the Corbin Burnes cutter when it was especially good a few years ago. But yeah, the pitch shape, there's nothing alarming there. I think the velo is down like a tick or something like that, but we're still fairly early in the season. So something to monitor, but yeah, I don't think either of us are too concerned about Corbin Burnes at this point. Transitioning from this series, Jack, something that we wanted to talk about is the bullpen and the fact that we referenced it earlier. Jalen Beek pitched in the 7th inning of a close game, right? This was a high leverage situation that I don't think was completely out of necessity. Torey Lovullo had other guys available in the bullpen that he probably could have gone to, but Jalen Beeks was the guy in the 7th inning, and he delivered. And he's only given up 1 earned run so far this season. And yeah, I mean, what's your perspective on this guy that the Diamondbacks picked up right before the season started, kind of as a depth option, and here he is pitching in high leverage situations?
I think you ride the hot hand, right? The guy's pitching well, and he clearly moved up the ladder. Obviously, Joe pitched the night before. Joe Manaply pitched the night before, so they really didn't have a choice. They had to go to Beeks in the 7th when they wanted a lefty. They were holding Puck back for the 9th inning because just the way it lined out, they knew that that's probably when the save was going to be, with left-handers coming up in the order. So, some of it's process of elimination and availability, but he clearly was capable of stepping up into the role. Our good friend Steve Zinsmeister, who does a good job with the pre and post game for the Diamondbacks over on Arizona Sports, he was the first to report that Brian Kaplan has been pushing Torey Lovullo to give more high leverage innings to Beeks and to Shelby Miller. So I asked Torey about that before the game today, and he said, well, Shelby for sure is probably going to get more opportunity in high leverage, and Beeks has done really well. Torey didn't really define it very well as far as saying, yeah, Beeks is going to get high leverage, but he got it today. And then the other thing that's kind of significant, I think, here is that it's very clear that you have a co-closer situation. Torey said as much today. He praised the bullpen for everyone being flexible as the roles have been fleshed out. And he defined the role as Puck and Martinez have the 8th and 9th. And it really just depends on where they are in the lineup, where the right-handers and where the left-handers are, who the team has on the bench. Like, for example, today, you had a string of right-handers. They bring in Martinez. He takes care of the 8th inning. Puck goes and takes the 9th. The previous save opportunity they had, it was Martinez who got the 9th. So I think they're just going to continue alternating. That's very clear that that's the plan. The other thing, go ahead.
I was just going to say about Jalen Beeks real quick. He has added 2 inches of induced vertical break on his 4-seam fastball. So for all the pitch movement nerds out there, induced vertical break, basically, it just is giving the illusion of rise to the hitter. And yeah, last season with his 4-seam fastball, he was at 15.3 inches. This year, that's up to 17.2 inches coming into today, which is a pretty impressive number. That's definitely well above average. So yeah, maybe there's something sustainable to what we've seen so far from Jalen Beeks. He has a 0.87 ERA. Obviously, it's still pretty early here, but yeah, I'm intrigued, Jack. It's not often that you see guys that are just kind of added as depth pieces emerge this quickly into meaningful roles.
Yeah, it's not usual. It's been a godsend for them. They've really needed it. He's started off eating valuable innings, but like you said, very quickly has moved into meaningful innings. So you don't see that every day. Kudos to Torey for recognizing it and listening to his coaches and the people around him. Say, hey, this guy's ready to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Was there another point you were going to make on this?
So the other point essentially is that you have Kevin Ginkel and Kendall Graveman working their way back from injury. And Torey made it very clear they're coming. It's imminent. And when they're healthy, they have roster spots on that team. They have roster spots and they have a role. And Torey flat out said, I have anxiety over this, because he knows he's got more tough decisions to discuss with Mike Hazen in the front office. I mean, what do you do with Shelby Miller and Jalen Beeks and, Bryce Jarvis and Ryan Nelson? There's 4 guys there, and you've got 2 coming in hot. And, oh, by the way, Dre Jamison is pitching great for Reno and getting close to checking off the boxes he needs to. So, there's a lot going on here. These problems do tend to take care of themselves, but they haven't yet. So it's going to be an interesting time to watch over the next 2 weeks to see how they resolve that. In the meantime, expect to see Shelby Miller in an elevated role, though.
Do you know what, out of curiosity, since you've been in the room every day talking with Tori, what are the final boxes that Dre Jameson needs to check? I imagine pitching a back-to-back is probably the biggest one. Is there something beyond that they're looking for?
So pitching back-to-back outings, also a second up down, and then how the recovery looks like after each of those events. So it looks to me like they're probably still trying to build him up stamina-wise to be able to check his recovery when he does a back-to-back or when he comes out for a second inning. To me, it looks like a couple of weeks tops.
Well, just another season of Diamondbacks baseball, Jack, where there's just too many good relievers and not enough roster spots. So we'll see how this all shakes out.
It's
We
a
did want
perennial problem, Jesse.
yeah, every year, every single year this happens, this poor baseball team. We wanted to take a quick look at the NL West. The San Diego Padres continue to win an outrageous number of baseball games. I believe they just pulled off another sweep. They are now 13-3. Giants at 11-4, Dodgers 11-5, the Diamondbacks at 9-7, and then the Colorado Rockies are at 3-12. In the basement of the NL West right now. Kind of a similar situation to when we checked this a week ago, Jack, where the Diamondbacks are playing pretty decent baseball and also 4 games out of first place in the division right now.
Well, some of it's going to sound like homerism and sour grapes, but I just don't see how the Padres maintain this pace. I still believe that the depth of the D-backs roster will win out in the long haul of a 162-game season. I think they have a lot more depth behind that front line. I mean, Michael King's a good pitcher, but, Nick Pivetta and Mendy Vasquez, I mean, these guys are, putting up sub-2 ERAs.
Hey, Jack, you saw what Randy Vasquez did to the Diamondbacks at the end of last season, right?
Yes, I did. But, I mean, again, you're talking about one loss record over 162 and making the playoffs. He's not a bad pitcher at all. He can be very good. But, the bottom line is that I don't see that rotation holding up. Jackson Merrill's out with a hamstring injury. They said it might be the minimum. Jay Cronenworth has a non-displaced rib fracture with no timeline for return at the moment. Things like that. We'll have to see. I mean, maybe everyone's wrong about the quality of the depth behind their front line. And they do have a great bullpen. I mean, Robert Suarez is lights out. Jason Adam has like 13 strikeouts in 8 innings. I mean, their bullpen is looking really sharp. I'm not saying they're a bad team by any means. I think that if they had one of those pristine health years, the Padres could very well win the division. I mean, their front line talent is that good. But we'll see how it plays out. Talk to me in 3 or 4 months. But right now they're playing great ball. Giants, they're 11-4. They're getting the hitting they need for like 3 guys are carrying their offense.
Mike Yastrzemski.
Jung-Hoo Lee and who else they got going there? Wilmer Flores has 6 home runs.
Yeah.
That may not be sustainable.
You don't think Wilmer Flores is going to hit 40 homers this year, Jack?
Probably not. But I do want to say that my preseason pick for NL Cy Young was Logan Webb.
Yeah, looking pretty good.
He's 2-0, 2.63 ERA. Robbie Ray is Robbie Ray. He's doing okay, but he's got 10 walks and 13 strikeouts in 15 innings. But he's 3-0, so he's winning his games. We'll see. Dodgers are looking pretty human lately. And the one thing I want to point out,
I was just going to say real quick, I just made an on-screen correction. The Dodgers are 11-6, not 11-5. I neglected to record their loss on Sunday Night Baseball to the Cubs. So they are 11-6. But yes, continue what you were saying.
So their starting pitcher ERA is 3.67, which is 11th in the league. Not bad. But as expected, they're getting 4.47 innings per start.
Yeah.
And over the last couple of days, I mean, they had to, go stay away from their top relievers because they had been using them an awful lot. And right now they got a 3.93 bullpen ERA, which is 17th in the league. Now, to be fair, 5 of those bullpen runs were given up by Miguel Rojas in 2 innings in a 16-0 loss to the Cubs yesterday. But, Blake Trinan and Vesia, they each gave up a run in the 7th and 8th inning today, to cause that 4-2 loss. So I have questions about the Dodger pitching not quite being as invincible as everyone thought coming into the season. And I've always had that reservation. It's not just about, they got 6, 7 guys, but who's going to give them 130 innings?
Right.
We'll see. I'm not too worried about the division and the records right now as far as the D-backs competitiveness. They themselves have a pretty big problem with Ketel Marte out. They're scratching on offense and trying to create chaos and try to make up for it. And, not doing so hot in that regard, especially against left-hand pitching. You have, Eugenio Suarez and Lourdes Gurriel Jr. both hitting 145. Gabriel Moreno's slumping. He's hitting 220. So some of their right-handed bats are not coming through for them. Other than Gino's 5 homers in 5 games, there's really been very little coming out of where they need to slug on the right side. So that's going to have to pick up if they're going to keep pace in this division. Of those 3 teams above them, one of them is going to stay hot at least.
Do you want to guess what the Dodgers' run differential is right now? Maybe you've already seen it.
I did not look at that number specifically.
They're +0. They are exactly even. They've scored 74 runs and they've allowed 74 runs. And granted, yes, much of that is because of the 16-0 loss in which, as you just said, Miguel Rojas may or may not have taken the mound. But that's still kind of crazy to me. I mean, they're 11-6, so
they're a fluke, Jesse. They're a fluke.
Yeah, I'm just saying, at this stage of the year, you got to take the records with a grain of salt. The run differentials really mean more than anything, and maybe we should all be skeptical of the Dodgers. Yeah, maybe not. Before we say goodbye, we wanted to finally touch on the topic of Jordan Lawlar, who, to my understanding, has been playing rather well in AAA of late. Tim Tawa, of course, has been the guy in the big leagues. He's the guy that the team turned to when Ketel Marte got hurt. And this is not at all to say that Tim Tawa has been some big disappointment. He's certainly looked great defensively, made several really impressive plays in the Sunday game of this Brewers series. But when you see Jordan Lawlar putting up big numbers down in Reno, I think the natural question that fans ask is like, all right, when are we going to make this happen?
Well, the other interesting thing is 5 of his last 6 games have been at second base.
Yeah, right.
It was 4 straight, a game at shortstop. He was supposed to have a day off today. Blaze Alexander was a late, I hate to say scratch because I don't know if he was hurt, but Lawlar was put in the lineup, and he's back at second base. He hit another home run. He's hitting over 290. His OPS is pushing 900. He started off a little slow, but he got hot. The one caveat with Lawlar's offensive improvement is he's got a 34% strikeout rate. So that's something to keep an eye on. But clearly they're getting ready to move him up. I think that one interesting fact about all this is even though Ketel Marte very well may be back by the end of April or the first few days of May, according to the latest update from Torrey, he's probably going to, they do this return to play protocol, and then he'll probably DH. Return to play protocol is they play him every other day for the first couple of games. They don't let him play 2 in a row until they're back 4 or 5 games. And then expect Ketel to DH a fair amount. And if that's the case, then all of a sudden there are more infield innings and starts. But then you're putting Jordan Lawlar in the lineup in place of, say, Lourdes Gurriel Jr., and you're moving Randall Grichuk out to left field or something like that, which if Lourdes keeps hitting 145, that could very well happen too. So we'll see. I mean, we don't know that Lawlar is getting the call soon, but they sure seem to be grooming him to do so quickly, which may not be fair to Tim Tower. I think that Tim Tower has, kind of earned a little bit longer run here. He had a good game today. He, laced a double. He got on by an error. He had a sac fly, scored 2 runs, drove in a run. I mean, he's contributing. Like you said, he's really athletic on defense. I personally would like to see him get 3-4 starts in a row and see what happens. But for right now, they're not doing that. They're alternating. By the way, Garrett Hampson has a 400 on base percentage. Just thought I'd throw that in there.
There you go. Yeah, I think I'm with you in that. Well, first of all, Jordan Lawlar playing this many games at second base in Reno is not a coincidence, right? I mean, I think we all kind of know what's going on there. The strikeout rate does feel like a deterrent to me, even though the surface level numbers are pretty good. Lawlar had a stretch of 3 games from April 9th to 11th where he had 8 strikeouts in 3 games. I do think that's something the Diamondbacks are probably keeping an eye on. I believe Torey Lovello, I think it was toward the end of spring training, referenced Lawlar's in-zone contact rate, which props to Torey Lovello on referencing a fairly obscure baseball stat. I'm all about it. But yeah, like these are the kinds of things that the Diamondbacks are measuring right now with Jordan Lawlar, and I don't have his in-zone contact numbers in front of me, but generally speaking, if your strikeout rate is in the 30s, then that's, you're probably not making as much contact in the zone as you would like. So I think the team is looking at far more than just the surface level slash line. And it really wouldn't surprise me, Jack, if we still were waiting a while for Jordan Lawlar to make his debut. I think they want him to be ready, just sort of in case, but I'm not sure I would say it's imminent that in the next 2-3 weeks, before Ketel Marte comes back or around that time. I think the D-backs, as Nick Picoro said on this show a week or 2 ago, I think the D-backs are really prioritizing the next time that they call up Jordan Lawlar, they want that to be the last time. They want him to be able to stay in the majors for the long haul. And I'm not sure that the numbers he's putting up right now are going to convince them that he's ready for that.
Yeah, we'll have to see. I mean, the fact that I do expect Ketel to DH quite a bit. I just don't forget about that point. I do
that's
think
a good point.
Here.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. The Diamondbacks have been pretty cautious across the board with Ketel Marte over the years, and certainly with a hamstring, an issue he's had in the past, they're going to be cautious with that this time around as well. So yeah, really very interesting to see how things go. We'll definitely be keeping an eye on Jordan Lawlar and his numbers down in Reno as the weeks go along. One last thing we wanted to hit on before the end of this show, and that is the upcoming series against the Miami Marlins. The Diamondbacks have an off day on Monday, and then they play the Marlins Tuesday through Thursday. We have our pitching matchups on the screen here. If you're joining us on YouTube, you may or may not know who these Marlins pitchers are, and I would not blame you if you did not. But we have Connor Gillespie starting against Merrill Kelly on Tuesday. Then it's Brandon Pfaadt against Max Meyer. Meyer's a former 3rd overall pick for the Marlins back in 2020. He's off to a pretty good start this year. And then Edward Cabrera, someone who's maybe people are more familiar with him as a Marlin. He's pitching against Eduardo Rodriguez in the finale of that series. Jack, what stands out to you about this Miami Marlins team?
I think that they're playing pretty well. They're 8-7. I don't think it's a fluky 8-7. They're 6-4 at home. They're kind of middle of the pack in everything. They're 14th in team OPS. They're 14th in runs scored. They're 19th in team ERA, 4.07. That's ahead of the 20th ranked Diamondbacks, 4.34. So I don't think that you can look at them. They got 6 guys in the lineup that are 100 OPS plus or better. So it looks like a fairly balanced attack. They're not going to win 85, 90 games. That's not probably in the cards for the Marlins this year. But I don't think that they're a 100-plus loss team either from the way they've looked early on. They look competitive. So 3-game series. We kind of went through this before when we faced the Nationals. Sorry, Jesse, I don't mean to say I told you so, but I told you so.
I get it. I was the guy who was saying the Nationals are I was putting them in the same category as the Rockies and the Marlins. So yeah, if they beat the Diamondbacks 2 out of 3, then I guess the Marlins could too. So we'll have another show probably at the conclusion of that Marlins series. We'll certainly keep you updated on our show plans. But we really appreciate all of you joining us here for this episode of Snakes Territory. As always, be sure to subscribe to the episode, as my camera has done some strange things here. This is fun. Now we've got like an interesting side view going here, Jack. All right, there we go. Here I am. Now we're back. Sorry about that, everyone. We appreciate you joining us here on Snakes Territory. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you have not already on YouTube. Leave a like on this video and drop a comment. We love hearing from you and interacting with you in the comments. It's been a lot of fun hearing from so many of you over the course of our first few shows. As always, you can find us on social media as well. I'm at Jesse and Friedman. Jack is at ShoeWizard59. And you can find our show at Snakes Territory over on X. Jack does a great job covering the Diamondbacks on a daily basis. He's on site for a whole lot of these games. You can find his work over at Arizona Diamondbacks on SI. That's si.com/MLB/Diamondbacks. A lot of great coverage from him and his team over there. Jack, anything else before we say goodbye here?
Not too much. I kind of wish I was on the plane going down to Miami. That sounds like it would be a fun trip, but got things to do here in Arizona. So we'll be covering this a bit remotely this time, not making the road trip, and we'll be ready to fill everybody in the next time out.
Well, thank you all once again for joining us on this episode of Snakes Territory. We really, really appreciate it. And we'll be back with another edition of the show very, very soon.